The production company, aka The Boss, is home to some of the most recognizable and successful franchises in all the modern anime. I'm talking about all-time greats, with this anime given a quality studio to work with this studio in the past shown to produce some heat from time to time. It really begs the question, how did the future of this anime turn out so wrong? Have you ever just watched something with the expectation of only seeing it one time? Shows like this are usually found in the garbage bin at your local Walmart or movie store. Sometimes you get lucky enough and you find something decent enough in one of these. I remember seeing my first copy of Hellgirls in one, Hellgirls being a generally classic old anime in a garbage bin. Funny, isn't it? Funny enough, I find myself watching it over and over again, fighting a certain project like this with a group of individuals or with it having some absurd plot that really meets your expectation or exceeds it is what keeps you going back there. This sort of thing keeps people going back to the medium of anime. If I find a show like this, I usually reference it as a hidden gem. These are the type of projects that are usually not tend to be talked about in the community that they're from, and they wind up forgotten. And with this new age of streaming services and new audiences growing up without watching the classics from the previous era, you find more and more of these hidden gems in bargain bins. When digging through a bargain bin, you never really know what you're going to be getting. It's that sort of mystery that really does keep you going back there, hoping that you'll get something good. You could find some obscure indie title, or you could get a literal classic. But the anime we're going to be talking about today isn't Hellgirl. It's Mayo Chiki. Hajime Asano, one-off romantic comedy in Mayo Chiki, works extremely well with what it was given. It doesn't feel pushy or tries too hard to make me care about certain characters. It does feel like it stays focused on what the goal of the show actually is. And every time I watch it, I want to understand and go through the cause and effect of getting to this particular scenario. But I get a little sidetracked with the comedy and or fan service. The premise isn't new, and it's actually something we might have already heard before. The seemingly boring but relatable protagonist has an illness where if he touches a girl, he starts to bleed uncontrollably, causing him to eventually pass out. So kind of like cooties in middle school. But what I actually like about the introduction of this character is how he doesn't really come across as an outcast, or he doesn't really seem generally unlikable from his classmates. Nowadays in animes, it's either one of the two. Either you are very much the most interesting person or character in the show, or the protagonist is the central outcast that doesn't get a lot of recognition or attention. Our protagonist here, he just kind of fits in the middle. He's just generally just an average guy. He's generic but quirky to the point where he comes across as relatable. Not overly heroic, but not a pushover. And when it's time for action, he actually does something. And what I also like about his introduction is when his supporting best friend character is introduced, he isn't forced to be part of the story. He's just generally there for a split second and then he's just kind of gone. If they would have added his character, it would have really damaged the story, and you really don't need him to be involved. So that's why it just works out better that he's not even around that much. The story then introduces the pair of Subaru and Kanade. Subaru is the reserved and out-of-touch male butler for the Suzuki family, and Kanade being the rich, popular girl of the school type. But then you later find out that she's a very sadistic and mastermind character who controls everything behind the show. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. I see her character as a ramped-up Akano from DxD with a mix of Rentosaka. And then when Kijiro sees Subaru changing, this reveals his secret, being that he wears panties. Oh, and he's actually a girl, causing Kanade to get involved. This leads to the three characters interacting on a much personal level. Kanade taking this opportunity to help Kijiro and Subaru at the same time as well as acting as her own entertainment. These three act as the formula for the show. What I loved while watching this anime was how the characters would interact. Kijiro and Subaru would have their will they or won't they. There would be some type of big problem in the story that would make the characters react seriously. All to find out that Kanade was constructing the entire thing. Or she just told some kind of lie to get her way in it. What makes this really work though is how serious the characters would take the threat or the problem. And it would also help how gullible the main character is. What kept me on my toes with this is I still to this day do not know Kanade's full character intentions, which kind of gets to my earlier point. She could do whatever she freaking wanted to do. Here's the list I made while watching the anime. She could have killed him rather than just torture him in episode 1, and by this point we don't really know if it's going to be a serious anime. We're guessing it's just going to be comedy, but we didn't know to this point, so anything could happen here. She faked a kidnapping to cause tension, to then fix the tension later in the next episode. Seduces the main lead a lot, like every episode. Spearheads a cult to then annihilate and reject the main lead in the most savage way possible, being in front of the entire female population at the school. Could have taken the main lead again, makes all the nerds and male audience simp for her. Oh, and by the way, like I said earlier, she's lying the entire time. And based on the time where you're watching the story, these are very convincing lies that could actually twist the story quite a bit. So, pretty impactful lies altogether, which does fit her sadistic character type. She manipulates basically everyone in the anime. And I honestly just miss that type of character. Getting this deep into the video, I kind of just realized I am simping pretty hard for this character. Maybe this video is just a way for me to simp for this character. I'll find out later then. There are just enough little small comedy twists that make me really enjoy watching this anime. But let's talk about things I did not enjoy about the anime, being the main 3 problems I had while watching this anime. So, number 1, the characters are good, but they're not great. And I could go down the line picking out each character and just pointing out what makes them generally kind of bad, except for Kanade's character. But Nakaru has almost no real reason to be given as much screen time as she does. Her role really isn't as important in the whole cult arc to where you really need her around. You could generally just replace her with a character that only gets maybe an episode of screen time, and that would be enough. And speaking of an episode of screen time, that's how long the cult arc basically ran for when she was in it, an episode. It was good that they put her in the same boat as Kuroha and they didn't try and overuse her very much. And even when I was having my recency bias of watching this anime for the first time, I was still in the back of my head thinking, no, maybe she's not a useless character. Maybe she has some kind of purpose for being here, but by the end of me really reviewing it, she doesn't really have much of anything. She could have just played a useful role as, say, the maids. And to preface on the maids were good, but their lines never really crossing the line into the story to where they're really hurting the story, or hurting the anime. Kinjiro was a solid lead, but he didn't really seem to expand his character very much. In simple terms, he just didn't stand out very much. He definitely could have played his role as the character a lot worse. And when I'm watching and looking up the voice actors for these shows and seeing what is their ceiling or what's the floor, the voice actor did pretty well. It's the same voice actor that played Soma from Food Wars, Yuzuru from Angel Beats, and the dog in Dog and Scissors. So in general, I just think the actor played it pretty freaking well. The character just didn't stand out as much as you would hope. He did have a lot of comedy dialogue that was pretty good though, so nothing too much to take away from him. I think the parents' role in the story, as well as the acting, was actually perfect. Kinjiro didn't really need his mom present at all in the story, but it was great just having her in a flashback and having the said flashback tie into the plot of the story. And Nagari was just outstanding, really. So I guess my biggest problem here would be really Subaru and Kuroha. Kuroha was good, but she needed more of a role, like her mother. Being used less, but when she was on the screen, I would hope that she would impact the story a little bit more and really lay out some better future events. Still, I felt like her role at the beginning was just good. Now, before we go into Subaru, let me bring up the next problem with the show, being the fact if you remove or change one character, this show is a lot more boring. This is kind of the conclusion I made after watching the anime for the first time, and thinking more about everything that happened, this is definitely the point I wanted to make, and is what led me to think about Kana as being a much better character than what I originally thought of, which leads me to not thinking about Subaru all that much. You see, Kana makes every action in the story happen basically, even before they actually happen. Like right here, she's already there knowing how this is going to end up. And with the anime labeled a harem anime, even though it's purely romance, Subaru was the only girl who was going to win in the end. Not because of her own development as a character, but because Kana is blocking really any challenger that wants to walk up. And because she is such a big reason why conflicts pop up, I feel that takes away from the characters, and we really didn't get to see enough, and we didn't really get to see enough in between the makings of episodes 9 through 12. And to me, it just felt a bit rushed. And I guess in simple 2020 terms, she comes across of having little small PP energy rather than having big PP main girl vibes that Kana, like I said, has. Like, the show should have felt more of a dynamic duo with these two characters on the screen, but it didn't feel that way. Which gets back to what I was saying earlier. If you just remove Subaru and keep everyone else in the story, it's still pretty good. If you remove Kana, it's definitely less nice. Masamune could probably replace Subaru pretty easily and just be a less plot out version of Taiga, which, now that I think about it, would have been really amazing. They could just made a smaller version of Toradora and been better off. And this is just a little teaser for later on the video. You're gonna hear Toradora and it's gonna make some sense. So, my final problem with the anime would be the 13th episode, which is a problem a lot of fans with this anime have. I'm sure this isn't just me, but this felt like an OVA episode. It had nothing to do with the actual plot. It did not involve the already more established characters into the mix. I understand it gave a lot more clarity to the fan service character in Nakuro, but it felt really out of place. Like, if they did it before, it makes a little bit more sense, but to put it at the end after you already have a very good send-off message in episode 12 just literally destroys the great send-off message you had in episode 12. And this kind of brings me back to my other video that I made of why Charlotte didn't get a season 2. They had 12 episodes and the fans were hoping to get the 13th episode, basically like an OVA of a whole happy ending of the two characters together. Well, this is that, but it's basically just a fan service character that really, I would say, fans who actually watch the anime don't really care for. So it just made even less sense of having it like that. What would have made the 13th episode better is kind of what they did in the Fate series. They had Saber, they had Rin, they had Emiya, and they all went out for a day in Japan and just hanged out basically. They could have did the exact same thing, but with this anime, had Subaru, had Kana, had Kidro just go out in Japan and do stuff together with no interruptions, had no other characters, just them having fun. You could have literally done the exact same thing and got a better result. So all in all, the 13th episode just sucks for the story, but as far as the actual episode itself is okay. But let's move on to something a lot of people are probably waiting for, being the numbers, the sales, the reason of why this anime didn't get a season 2. So let's just first talk about how much this anime sell. Well, let's look at the numbers and organize this off of the sales. In that year, 7 animes had the unfortunate fate of having 0 copies sold for the full year. Yes, you heard me correctly. The entire full year, 4 seasons, 0 copies sold. And among them is an actual good anime people swear by and wish would have a second season. Funny enough, Dead Man Wonderland is one of these animes that sold nothing. When looking at these numbers for the first time, I'm just thinking to myself, I have to make a video on this. That's insane. But moving on to this anime, I want to say it finished about middle of the pack, with it selling 5,608 copies. Which is a solid number, but really about average today in 2020. But back in 2011, it was pretty bad. But really, like I said, it's about average, and it could even warrant a season 2 nowadays. But leaving it up to the companies to decide, they're just generally just not going to have a season 2. If they would have sold probably, like, I want to say 1,000 more copies, I think they would have had a good case to get a season 2. And you might be thinking, well, if that was the average, what was the best for that year? Well, in the year 2011, it was as hard as any other year, meaning the top spots were in the range of 80,000. Maho Shouju had the most selling that year, being 80,089 copies. The second being Fate Zero, which is kind of cool and crazy to think about. Another anime people would have noticed being up here is Persona 4, but the most surprising of them all is Infinite Stratos, selling 38,885 copies. Yes, this Infinite Stratos. How in the actual did this anime beat Steins Gate? How in the actual did this anime beat Steins Gate? You know, one of the best animes ever made was beaten in sales by this. I guess it really does matter what type of fan base you have around you and how strong that fan base is. But this anime, at the best, is like mediocre. Like, I consider myself a harem connoisseur, and I can tell you, it's not even top 5. It's not even top 10 best harems of all time. Maybe top 20, I guess. I guess. Not really, but I'm done with the sales. Now let's briefly talk about the production companies and the studios. Studio Feel is the anime studio behind Mayo Chiki. Here are some notable projects that they made in the past, being Hinamatsuri, which is a well-known comedy and slice-of-life anime, Dagashikashi, which is a well-known comedy and slice-of-life anime, Papa no Kato, Outbreak Company, and a lot of other popular but albeit mediocre raunchy series. But I will say the best known anime up here is Snafu, which is a modern classic in the romantic and comedy slice of life field. So all in all, it's a solid studio working on this anime. And like I said in other previous videos on my channel, the anime studio is not the person that actually owns the anime or decide what happens with the anime. And if that's like the first time of you hearing that, or you want to learn more information about that, I have some videos up here in the card that you can go click on, also link in the description. But back to this. The harder side of gauging exactly if the anime is going to be having a second season is always going to be going down to the production company, which, like I said, is kind of hard to gauge. But looking at all the parties involved with this anime, it was generally set up to be the next big anime series. The studios involved with it are as follows, and the most important to the least important being Star Child Records, Media Factory, TBS, Dax Production, PRA, and Ray. And here are some notable animes from each of those collective bodies. From Star Child Records, there's Toradora. Like I said earlier, what this anime should have kind of molded themselves a little bit more after. Golden Time, FLCL, Sentokai Yakudon. Like I mentioned earlier, Toradora and Mayo Chiki are pretty similar in ways. And it looks like the companies took notice of that and jumped on the project, hoping to get some of the same result, being the majority leader of the project. Next is Media Factory. Some notable animes under them is Steins Gate, No Game No Life, ReZero Kara, Soul Eater, Main Abyss, Tomodachi. So a lot of well-known and very popular animes, as you can tell. So I'm sure a lot of the people involved really wanted this project to do as the best it could. And when I keep going, you see next to TBS, Kanade, Snafu, Maid-sama, Chunabuyu. After that was the Dax Production Studio, had SAO, Fairy Tail, PRA had High School DxD, Ray had Himoto Umarachi-chan, and Camphor, right? Why did I even have Camphor on this list? And so in conclusion though, I think this anime had a lot behind it to be successful, and if anything, just needed more behind it. Needed more fans to buy copies. I think if they would have sold, say, 2,000 more copies, they could have really demanded a season 2. With maybe selling 1,000 more copies, they could have just, asked, say, hey, maybe could we get a season 2? The story has recently been updated with new manga chapters, going at least 2 months further into the story. And from what I know, the light novel is basically done. And if you want to read the light novel, I have some bad news. It really hasn't been translated yet to other languages, and it's fully in Japanese. If you want to read it in English, you're gonna have to buy the manga, being in a bundle. Speaking of the manga and the light novel, if you would like to also get yourself a copy and purchase it, check out the link in the description. I can honestly see a season 2 in the future, just not that soon. If the anime was to come back, I can kinda expect it to sell around 5,000 copies of Blu-rays. And speaking of Blu-rays, if you would like to also get yourself a copy of the Blu-ray, check out the link in the description. And this is gonna be my final point about the anime, being the ending. I feel like the anime is definitely worth watching, but it's definitely not a classic. It's not gonna be an anime that just outright grabs your attention and makes you focus on it. But it's not garbage. It's a solid project, and if it had some more luck, it would have been a great project. With it selling a decent amount of copies to consider having a season 2, but not enough to just outright demand a season 2. I will say it has the best overall rating from the community I've seen in a very long time, at least on the front page of it, at least from what I've been seeing. Like, seeing a consistent 7 to 8 rating for reviews is kind of crazy. Like, if you know my anime list, you will never see this, ever. You're usually going to be seeing a lot of more spread opinions about the anime. So on my official rating, where do I rank it? I would say out of my 1 out of 5 rating system I have here, I think it's like a 2.7 out of 5. But I think that's going to do it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it, liked it. If you have any questions or you want to go and check the resources, comment down below or check the description. As well, if you're also interested in other anime and money related videos, I don't have a playlist yet made for all the videos I made, but I do have them linked in the description, as well as some cards up here to the right if you want to go check those out. And lastly, if you want to make any requests for seeing some of your animes up here or having me talk about them, leave me a comment down below saying I would like this anime or I would like that anime. Can you talk about this anime? It really will just depend on when I kind of do them if you do that. But that's going to do it. BarryAnime out. And thank you for watching. Peace.